In this video, I'm going to show you how to use the quadratic formula in order to determine zeros for quadratic functions. In the example that we're looking at right now, f of x equals 2x squared plus 8x minus 42. The first thing that we're going to want to do is take a look at our formula. So let's write out our formula, which will be given to you on all assessments. So we get x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. And we can clearly see that we need to find our values of a, b, and c in order to use this actual formula. So let's go ahead and find our values of a, b, and c. A is the number in front of x squared, so that's 2. B is the number in front of x, that's 8. And c is the number that's by itself, that's negative 42. Now all I'm going to do is use my formula and substitute my values in, using parentheses when I replace anything. So I get x equals negative of b is 8 plus or minus the square root of 8 squared minus 4 times 2 times negative 42 all over 2 times my a value, which is 2. So at this point, you've done a lot of the work. You've put everything in. All we have to do now is simplify it down. So let's keep going. The first thing that we're going to want to do is take care of everything that's super easy. I think the things that are easy are making values negative, multiplying two values together, and squaring a number. Those are probably the easiest 3 steps. So let's get those out of the way right now. All right, so that gives us x equals negative 8 plus or minus the square root of 8 squared. That's 8 times 8, that's 64. We're going to keep everything else the same. 4 times 2 times negative 42. And then we can also multiply our 2 times 2 and get a 4 there. Our goal when this is all said and done is so that we can have just a number right here, just a number, and a number right here. That's all we want, just 3 numbers separated by our plus or minus symbol that's right there. We want a fraction with 2 numbers on the top, 1 number on the bottom, and then we'll be all set. Okay, so the next thing that we need to do is simplify the inside of our radical, or our square root in this case. That happens to be this 64 minus 2 times negative 4 times negative 42. It looks like a big mess. You're probably already anxious about what to do next. So what we're going to do is we're just going to leave that minus sign in there, because if you don't, you're probably going to make a mistake. It's just like being in class with Mr. Satz. It's so much fun him moving things around on the board. Okay, now we are ready to do that simplification. But again, we're going to take our time because this is where the majority of mistakes are made. So we get x equals negative 8, because that's a number we wanted. We're going to put that 4 back where that was, because again, that number and the other number, negative 8, are both good. We need to turn that square root into a number now too. So we get the square root of 64. And then we're just going to leave that minus sign in there, and I'm going to do 4 times 2 times negative 42. And when I do 4 times 2 times negative 42, I get negative 336. Now because I had that minus sign there, this minus sign here, and this minus sign here, I put this in parentheses so that things could be, kept nice. Now what we need to do is simplify those double negatives, because as we've learned, back in the day in math class, we can't have double negatives, they equal a positive. So we get x equals -8 plus or minus the square root of 64 plus 336 all over 4. Again, we need to turn this here into a number. Then we can square root it, and then the whole thing turns into one number, and then everything is easy. So let's combine our 64 and our 336, and we'll get 400, and that's a pretty good number. So we get x equals -8 plus or minus the square root of 400 divided by 4. All right, so now all we need to do is take the square root of 400 in order to simplify that part down. So square root of 400 comes out nicely. It's just 20. Okay, now we're ready to do our last step, which is simplify it down to our two answers. So this is where we were at the end of the last step, -8 plus or minus 20, all divided by 4. All right. Now we can do -8 plus 20 divided by 4 and -8 minus 20 divided by 4. Well, -8 plus 20, that's 12 divided by 4, that's 3. And don't forget, we want to make that into a 0. So our x value is 3, our y value is 0. And then over here, we have -28 over 4. Well, that's -7. And again, we want to turn that into a point, -7, 0. Hopefully that made sense, and we can move on.